Check, check, check. How's our audio check? Can you hear me now? BR549, come in. All right. How's our audio now?
No sound, but that was from before, I'm sure.
Is it reading now?
Ask again.
I did.
Okay, sound is good.
Sound is good?
Good. You got 3 goods.
All right. How many people we got on there yet? Enough to start?
27.
27?
Yes.
All right. Let's roll. Let's do this. First of all, I'm going to try not to choke to death on that awesome Reuben sandwich Kathy just brought me that I slammed down. Thanks for tuning in again. We just did the live feed the other day for the new 2018 Hoyt XXL. I will be doing some videos on that on bear shaft tuning and kind of some secondary thoughts on the cam system. After looking at that bow a little bit more, I mean, you guys were probably thinking the same thing that I was. I need to put this cam, the XXL cam system on a Prevail right meow. Well, the problem with that is limb pocket angles and limb issues. I asked because I was ready to do that virtually immediately because that cam feels really, really smooth. I don't know it for a fact, but if Hoyt is not already working on that, and if they're not already working on a small version of that cam, we need to posse up and head up to Utah and whoop some hiney. Anyway, all right. So this live feed today, I've been putting out some teasers out there. Earlier this year, as you guys, obviously are well aware, this is the second year cycle for Hoyt. So they don't put out a new target bow every single year. They put one out every 2 or 3. So for 2018, they do have the new hunting models, but tournament bows are going to be the same. So here about 6 months ago, I wanted to do something different. I know that comes as a shock to a lot of you, but I wanted to do something a little bit different. And this bow is not a bow that I'm going to shoot forever. Kathy and I did this bow. It's the BJM Aloha bow. And no, it's not a college bowl game. None of that stuff. The NCAA is not involved. But at the end of rude, Kathy's phone's not on silent. She's going to hell. Sinner. She is that person in the theater. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot this bow for the entirety of this season. And then at the end of the season, I'm actually going to have an auction on Bow Junkie Media. And I'm going to be selling this bow and working with some of the fine folks over in Hawaii to kind of help archery over there on the islands. So this bow is not just for me to walk around flossing. This was built for a purpose. There's a lot of good people, good archers over there on the islands, and I've become very good friends with a lot of them. So that's kind of the idea there. For those of you that are wondering, as far as this bow goes, it's going to have the freak show. It's going to have the freak show rest on it, of course. Got a little lenticular action going there with old pretty Jessica Broadwater. But obviously we'll be using hot rods, stabilizers from AAE as usual. We'll also be using gripper components, quick disconnects, sidebars. As far as the sight goes, I am going to be shooting pretty rare white, all white, Excel Carbon Achieve. So this bow is technically a 2017, but right now it's brand new, but it's 2017 Hoyt Prevail, 40 inches. The draw length from the factory is 31.5, but I kind of tweak some stuff out, get it at about, I like to get that valley a little softer, so it's about just over 32 inches in draw length. So without any further ado, we're going to unplug that soda machine just in case you heard that, but we're going to go ahead and bust this bad boy out right here. Here it is. This is the bow junkie, Hoyt 40-inch Prevail Aloha bow. Kathy's trying not to murder herself over there. We got the white limbs. Now this is not just paint. This is actually Cerakote. Darren down at Melonhead Customs in Phoenix did a fantastic job on this. I've thrown a couple things on here, threw some bracketry, threw a peep in that. It's probably not in the right height, but whatever. But this is the bad boy right here. You can see the white. You can see the white True-Ball Excel Carb and Achieve sight. Got the black Freak Show. I was going to go with a red Freak Show on this bow, but to be completely honest with you, it looked like shit. So I just went with the black, and it's turned out very, very good. This bow is currently sporting a set of exit wire trophy material strings from First Strings. This is the natural with black serving. I'll be rocking the hooded specialty peep. For indoors, I don't put the rubber over it, but when I do transition to outdoors, I will be putting the hood over here. So this is basically the bow. It's been done now for a few weeks. We've been just kind of putting everything together, making sure we were ready to pull this off. I am shooting the 25mm Achieve scope housing with a 4-power Feather Vision Verde Plus lens. I used to shoot a 6, however, in my old age, 6-power simply is above my pay grade. I don't have enough lead in my pencil for that anymore. One thing that I do always add to my bows right off the bat is the Linda Ochoa Good Energy, Positive Energy sticker. Can you see it right there?
You can come closer. Good.
Right there. That's the Linda Ochoa Positive Energy sticker. Linda sells these. You can contact her. Let me get her little sticker here. They come with this in this nifty little thing, and there's a little description in there of what it's all about. You can contact Linda Ochoa on Instagram or Facebook, and they're only like $5, so they're not super expensive. But in today's world and in today's archery, we need all the positive vibes we can get out there. So contact Linda. I will be putting one of these on my hunting bow, and obviously on the Aloha bow. I already have it on my other bows. So with that being said, there she is. That's the Aloha bow.
What's the draw weight?
Draw weight on this bow is probably going to come in at about 56.5 pounds. At my draw length, I just don't see any need to shoot 60 pounds. Plus, I ordered these limbs at 55 pounds, but by the time I get done twisting up stuff and doing this and that and the other, it usually comes in about 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds over that. So rather than just order a 60 and then have to back it down too far, I just order them at 55 and they end up about 56.5, sometimes 57 pounds. With the spiral cams, with these SVX, well, with all of them, but the SVX cams are no different. I just prefer the draw cycle, and I prefer the valley of these cams in the 55 to 57 pound range. Now, for some guys out there like Steve Anderson, he shoots the big number 5 cams, and he kind of long strings them a little bit. So that kind of accomplishes the same thing. Steve does run his draw length a little longer than mine because he's young and he can do that. As you can see, the spacing on my lobes of the cam here are not overly close, but a little closer than what you might normally see out of the box. And that is because I do kind of twist some stuff up. I don't quite go old school Vantage Elite Plus, Ultra Elite, Jesse Broadwater, crunching the whole thing down 2.5 inches axle to axle. I don't quite go that far. Not on these anyway, or at least I haven't. But with that being said, before we get going on some basic setup and tuning, are there any questions about the bow itself? Darren down at Melonhead did a fantastic job. I just basically sent him a bunch of pictures of my dumb ass and my jerseys, and said, I want to make a bow that's got an Aloha print on it, and here you go. And this is what he came back with. So, any questions on the bow itself first?
RJ Clock, so you prefer the non-SVX cams?
I kind of do. RJ Clock asked if I prefer the non-SVX cam, which is the modulated cam. So basically, RJ was asking if I like the older cams better than the new modulated ones. I kind of do, but I've been shooting spiral cams for a long time, and it's just kind of been my preference. I have a podium that has that was converted. I converted a podium over to the old spiral cams, and it shot phenomenal. Now, obviously, with anything new, everything gets bugs worked out. So these SVX cams, which is just basically, for those of you wondering, it's a modulated spiral cam. They've got all the bugs worked out of it. It shoots just as good. I haven't seen any degradation of speed. Tuning wise, I haven't had any issues tuning it. The only thing that I can tell you that I have noticed about the old spiral cams to the modulated ones is a lot of us used to run the top cam a little bit more advanced, maybe an 1/8 of an inch, 3/16 sometimes, just depending. Either I've gotten older, or I've gotten weaker, or I'm just a sissy, but I can't run the SVX cams as fast on top as I used to. I don't have any rhyme or reason for that. But that's just what it is. And I actually, once I get these bows dialed, and we'll start going over some initial setup stuff here in a minute, but once I get these dialed, I will actually step out at 80 to 100 yards, and I will tune for hold. Once my stabilizers are, look folks, this is not, hey, let's throw a loop on here right now and jump to 100. This is down the process. But I will actually use my bus cable or my control, depending on how minute of an adjustment I want to make, and I will actually tune the bow to hold using the timing of these cams. That is one thing that I really, really do like about the spiral cam family. From way back in the Darren Cooper days up until right now, is you can really fine tune your hold by adjusting the timing of these cams. Like, not sometimes one twist, and sometimes a half a twist in the bus cable is more than enough, and I'll actually jump up here and do half a turn yoke stuff. So that's one thing that I do really like about the Spiral X, or the spiral cam family itself.
Will you use a larger scope size for 3D?
Will I use a larger scope size for 3D? No, because I don't shoot any 3D. Pretty simple. So the answer to that is no. Obviously I do attend all the ASAs, but that's to bow junkie it up. So when I'm out there getting funky with the junkie, I don't got time to shoot a bow. I don't got time to do a lot of things, period. I try to make sure I eat. Other than that, that's about it. So I shoot, the only 3D stuff that I really shoot at is going to be like redding, 3D animals, but it has an orange dot and it's marked. So I won't be shooting any unmarked stuff or any of the known pro stuff. However, if I was to shoot any of the ASA known pro stuff or any 3D period, yes, I would absolutely go to a bigger scope. Absolutely. I don't think I'd probably just go to a middle one, just to increase that field of view, bring in a little bit more light, and just make target acquisition a little bit better.
How do you feel about creep tuning the SVX and Hyper ZT cams? Brandon,
how do I feel about creep tuning both the cam systems? Well, number one, I've not actually shot the new Hyper cam hardly at all, other than just right here when I was doing things the other day. I'm waiting for a sight. When that comes in, I'll start shooting that. Creep tuning for me, I don't do a whole lot of creep tuning, but what I do is a whole lot of up and downhill draw length tuning. And for me, what that means is is if you set your draw length on flat ground, and this is a problem that a lot of people actually have, is if you set your draw length on flat ground, you can pound. When you go to shoot downhill, you can pound. When you go to shoot uphill, that's when creep tuning is going to come and bite you right in the butt, is because that's when you're going to be creeping. Historically for me, by the time I get done getting my draw length set how I want it, I get the D-loop, the peep height. When I get everything set, I line tune it, and I do all of the things that I usually end up doing. I can creep up and still hit the dot. So I don't intentionally creep tune because there's some other things that I think are more important, like being able to hold good and being able to tune it. And so creep tuning is just something more that you can verify. But for me, if I was to go and actually creep tune and then go yoke tune for a bare shaft and then go line tune and then adjust my draw length and do all of that stuff, I just think that the creep tuning is going to fall somewhere there in the middle. And for me, I'm not saying this is the way for everybody, but for me, if I do all of my steps properly, the creep tuning works itself out. Trevor, that's a good question, Trevor. Trevor asked, how will we see this bow when I have the matching shirt on? First of all, there is no matching shirt, so that's key. One of the things that I told Darren down at Melonhead was I don't want it to be an exact match of any of my particular shirts. This is just a concept thing. And, you know, part of my thing is know your role. And this is artistry. This is that the right word? Artistry? Darren's an artist. Okay? And so part of knowing your role is you don't tell people that know how to do things you don't how to do it. I am no artist. I do break shit, but I'm not an artist. And so when I deal with Darren on these, when I deal with John Fossen over at Atomic Jerseys, good friend of mine, on my Hawaiian jerseys, I don't tell him how to do his job either. So when it came for this BJM Aloha bow, I just basically said, here's the concept, here's a picture of me in all these bright ass shirts, do a riser, put the Bow Junkie logo on it, let me see what you got. And he sent me 4 ideas and they were all fantastic, but this one to me kind of spoke the most because I like the reds and the whites and the purple in there. So there really is not going to be an identical shirt.
Ryan Branco, how much adjustment do you use with the adjustable flex and the cable rod?
That was Ryan? Ryan, what's up, my man? Ryan asked how much of the adjustment of the adjustable cable rod do I actually use? So with that being said, we're just going to go ahead and start jumping right into the basic tune-up of this bow because that's one of the first things that I do. So as most of you know, on these Hoyts, it's adjustable, it's not flexible, and there's a big difference there. I'm not saying, huh?
It's dark. We need light.
Oh, well, it's probably light enough. I'm not saying that I don't like or don't think that the flexible ones work because I'm sure that they do. Been beat by lots of people shooting those. So I have no problem with that per se. But when it comes to this Hoyt one, what I do is, because of my draw length, obviously things are a little bit discombobulated, but the first thing that I will do is I won't move it in all the way. And I do like the fact that Hoyt kind of has some clicks in there so you can feel it. But what I will do is I will move it until there's 1 click left. So I will put it on the first to last mark. What that does for me, and I just know this already, Ryan, so basically what I'm doing is I am pre-adjusting this so that if I was to go shoot 3D, I would have to adjust this again because for me, there's my cable rod here. For me, when I set this where I set this, when I come to full draw, come around here a little bit. When I come to full draw, what happens is my cables just barely encroach on the side of the scope housing, just about like that. Not like this, not in the middle, but the cables just barely encroach on the inside of the scope housing. So for me, that's pretty important. I don't want too much of the cables in my sight picture. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I suck. But I don't like to see that much of it. So I love the relief. I love the torque relief. But for me, I just set it up to where those cables are right on the inside of my scope housing, and I just let her buck from there.
Shane Miner, you mentioned line tuning. Could you elaborate more on it? Do you only tune with the vertical line, or are you shooting at horizontal line also?
Who was that?
Shane Miner.
Shane. I actually did a video here a couple months ago on line tuning. That's a pretty deep topic. So if you want to go back, you can go to my YouTube channel. It's probably the quickest place to find it. And check out the line tuning video there. But yes, I am actually doing both horizontal and vertical lines separately, not as one, so there's no X. It's just one, and then when you do one, you move it, you rotate the cardboard so it goes up and down. But there is a YouTube video out there on my YouTube channel that will explain that.
Casey Ross, when is First Light coming out with the Aloha camo pattern?
I'll talk to Kenton about that in a couple of weeks at ATA and see. Oh, Casey Ross, my smart-ass brother, my brother, asked when First Light's coming out with the Aloha camo. So I said I'll mention that to Kenton in a couple of weeks at ATA and see what they have to say. So it would probably be good for hunting pigs over in Hawaii. Other than that, probably not so much.
Aaron Smith, Dakota Rifle. Wait a minute, there it is. Sean Zanino, where can I buy the adjustable cable rod?
Sean?
Yep.
Sean, the adjustable cable rod on these comes stock on the Hoyt. It's actually the standard cable rod down here, but the other mechanism is actually bolted into machined grooves on the Hoyt riser. What?
He's rocking the old Contender Elite.
The old Contender Elite. What you would want to look for? Who made that? Arctech. You would want to look at Arctech Systems. ARC TEC. Arctech. We used to run those on the Vantage Elite. You pull out your cable rod from the riser, and they have a cable rod that goes in, and then it has an adjustment just like this, and you can adjust that out here. So that would be the spot to go there. There probably are several others. I have to be honest with you. I love them, first of all. However, you might have a hard time finding those nowadays because every bow manufacturer went to it. So the accessory companies that were making those, their game kind of got salted because once every bow company started using them, then what? So if you can't, and I don't know if they still have them or not, but if you can't find one, send me a private message and I'll look through my my hoarding box, my box of goodies, and see if I have one left. I know I gave a couple of them away previously, but if you can't find one, send me a private message. You're gonna have to remind me I'm old, #old people problems, and remind me what the question was, but yes, you can get that.
Dakota Rifle, is there a certain way you fletch your arrows with the cable rod that close?
Yes, with a left offset. I know the rage right now is the whole determine which way the bear shaft spins and then fletch your arrows accordingly. And I just saw a thread the other day on the internet, and they were talking about which way the strings twisted, but I didn't hear anybody talking about which way the individual strands are twisted. The other thing I didn't hear anybody talking about was they talked about the string as it's going through the cycle unwinding. Well, the problem is when you come to full draw, the string has almost no tension on it. So from full draw to brace height, the string's actually getting tighter. So there is going to be some slight rotation right there, but I don't really care. Jesse Broadwater, for instance, he fletches his indoor arrows one way and his outdoor another. I did hooter shooter testing. I have fletched up both. Obviously, I had to re-index them because they would slam the arrow rest, and I've just not seen any difference. So, so for me, and for outdoors, I know this is going to sound weird, which will be pretty common for a lot of the people that know me. For outdoors on my X10s, on my Easton X10s, I use the AAE $23 fletching jig, the Fletch 3. It's 1 degree of true offset, and it weighs less than this thing Allen wrenches. It breaks down, I can throw it in my pack, and it works amazing. I don't use it for indoors because it doesn't give you enough. It's 1 degree, it's like $23. But that's what I use for outdoors. I've tried more helical, and the more helical that I run, the bigger my groups get. So as I start to come back down, they get tighter and tighter and tighter. And for me, about 1 degree has proved to be the best. Maybe that's because my arrows are 410 grains. Maybe I don't know why, but proof's in the pudding. And so scoreboard. So I just look down range and whatever's best. So for me, I'm using the AAE Fletch 3 for outdoors, and it's only a right hand and it's only 1 degree. However, I don't have to move this because the X10 is so much smaller. On my Easton 2712s, I am running the 4-inch AAE hybrid vane, and it does have left helical on it, left offset, however you want to call it. And I put on there a pretty good amount. Enough of an amount that it doesn't frustrate me trying to fletch them, but it's a significant enough amount that it gets a lot of twist going. And if any of you are going to wonder about that green Nock, that is the new AAE Nock. AAE is coming out with its own line of nocks, and they are testing very, very well. They are testing very, very well so far. On that note, thanks for asking, whoever didn't ask. On these nocks, one of the things that has really impressed me was some of the bear shaft testing that I did, where I will tune it indexed regularly with the little nib pointing out. Some folks do it either way, but I will tune it with the nib out. And then one of the things that I'll do to test the consistency of the nock in the bear shaft is I will flip and knock it backwards, and it changes the impact point. There's no doubt about it. But by how much? And I'll put it this way. With this nock, when I rotated it 180 degrees, it still shot a 5-spot X at 20 yards. Now, the first one, of course, out of the machine, the first one was dead center in the middle. But when I rotate this, it still hit a 5-spot X. And I haven't been able to do that with another big nock. So anyway, all right, what else you got, babe?
When are those nocks going to be available?
They should be available probably right after ATA. Probably right after ATA. Those nocks will be available after ATA. They are going to make them in, I believe, 3 sizes. So pretty excited for that.
What draw length are you?
What draw length am I? I would just call it 32. Obviously I run it a little bit different for indoors than outdoors. Outdoors I'll shorten it up just a skoshie bit, but I order my bows 31.5. Historically they come in, within 1/4 of an inch of that, which is fine for me, but then I'll twist some stuff up and do some other stuff, but I end up right around 32.
Which AAE vane will you be using for redding?
For redding, I will be using the PM20. That is the max material. It's 1.67 inches or something like that. They call it the PM20 because I don't know. It's not actually 2 inches. It's pretty close though. A for effort. Yeah. So I like that vein. I am, however, trying to lean on a good old Nick and TJ Fisher to make a 2.0 hybrid vein. So basically it would be the PM20 length, 1.68 inches. it'd have the stabilization ridges, it'd have the shield cut, the whole 9 yards, but it would be made out of the Plastifletch lick and stick material. I'm trying to get them to make me some of those so I can test them. The Plastifletch material is not quite as durable as the urethane-based Max material. This is true, but I can fletch a dozen vanes with the hybrids in about a quarter of the time, because you don't need a primer pen with the hybrids. Prep is way easier. That's why they're called a lick and stick. So, but right now I'll be shooting the PM20. All right. So first thing we're going to do, first thing I'm going to do on here is, obviously I have installed the rest. Usually it depends on the bow, to be honest with you. I will start off with a standard width. I shoot the standard width with the big arrows. I don't shoot the wide because I don't have a problem with it falling off, usually. But I will start off with a 10,000th blade, and then depending on how that tunes up and how it shows forgiveness-wise, I might transition to a 12 if I feel like I'm getting some ups and downs that I don't deserve. If I deserve it, then obviously that's on me. On this particular bow, where I put my sight is pretty well out there, so I don't have to put a long overdraw on here for torque tuning. So this is where my bows torque tune, and so that's where I run them. As far as the launcher blade angle goes, I run the launcher blade angle. You can't see that for squat.
Can't see. Hold on, let me get my...
You can. There we go. I got it. I run my launcher blade angle anywhere from 35 to 38 degrees. I don't like to go any steeper than that because of the effects it has on the stiffness of the blade. If you have a 10,000th blade on there and you run that thing super steep, it's going to make it act way stiffer. If you run it super flat, it's going to make it a lot weaker. And so a lot of times people talk about, I'm gonna have me a seat here. A lot of times people talk about, blade thickness and the angle of it, and talk about nock travel and some other stuff like that. For me, if your blade is too tall, you are going to be lacking forgiveness because there's just not much give there. For those people shooting followays off of a stainless steel launcher, you don't have much give there. If you have any nock travel up and down, there's going to be forgiveness issues at some point. If you're a good enough shot, you can get away with it, no doubt about it. But launcher blades have been made out of this, and as many world's records has been set with those since the dawn of time, they are kind of the gold standard for a reason. That's not to say that the new prophecy that I'm going to run on that XXL won't pound. Kendall Woody has won. He won outdoor nationals. He beat Jesse Broadwater in a shoot-off in the regular pro, and then turned senior and won senior pro, and he's shooting the DOA, which is the same mechanism as the prophecy, but it doesn't have a super rigid stainless steel launcher. So there's a little bit more forgiveness there. If you do like a limb-driven or a cable-driven standard type rest, the Pro Drop offers that, and it actually has an overmolded an overmolded spring steel launcher blade. So it still offers you kind of the best of both worlds if you're a follow-away fan. But if you have to have a super thick stainless steel launcher on there because your follow-away snaps off regular blades, that might be something to look at. Anyway, so we will, let's move on here. I'm going to check I haven't really done much to this. How many people out there have, obviously, as you know, I don't show everybody how to tie on D-loops because there's a bajillion videos out there about that, but how many of you would like me to show you how I tie on my adjustable nock point? I tie on a nock point. Well, I tie it on, but Jake Kaminsky is who showed me how. I just kind of modified it a little bit for, I don't even know if I modified it, but Jake Kaminsky showed me how to do this, and I brought it over to Compound because I think it's a great idea. It's a nock point you tie onto your string that you can adjust if you need to make big gang adjustments. You can actually adjust it up and down on the string. Who wants to see me tie one of those on? If not, I'll just slap a loop on here and we can check the draw length and timing and such.
Aaron Smith says, yeah.
Okay. How many folks we got on there?
78.
All right, you guys make sure that you
Williams just
make sure that you guys share this video so that folks can see, you know, what we're talking about and kind of help spread the word there.
Everybody says do it.
Do it. All right. Okay, so what this knock set is about is both having a knock set and having the adjustability if you go to make a big adjustment with your D-loop, peep, and your whole system, that you don't have to cut off the knock set and start over, because I'm going to tell you right now, I am the last person that wants to put a knife next to my string, but I have to do it sometimes anyway. So for me, at my draw length, with these bows timed the way they are, just historically speaking, with these Hoyt bows, for me, at my draw length, I start at dead even for knock height. Now, I usually end up having to bump my rest up a little bit, or I bring my set down. So I usually end up maybe a 1/16 of an inch below center, maybe. But that's where I start. It's not where I start everybody else, but I think that that's a draw length issue. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to make a little mark right here at even. And then basically, I drop my... All right, so what I have here, and for this I like to use the BCY nylon. You guys see that right, Chow? So I like this BCY nylon. It works really good for this. So what I'll do is I'll just split this over here, and then I will actually bring it through twice. Bring it through there twice. Now, it's important when you go to bring this down, you don't let it kink on itself. So you have to maintain the lasso here. So don't let it double over on itself. I'm going to bring that right down to my line. Give that a little snug. And then I'm going to do the same thing underneath. Just going to make a loop here. And then I'm going to bring it through twice. And this is for size. This part is not for stability. And then when you go to loop it, you do it real slow. You see how that loop is actually closing round instead of twisting up on itself? That's what you want. Pull it nice and snug, come over the top, go through twice, close it nice and slow so that the loop doesn't close on itself. Now I will do this probably about 6 times so that the whole thing is maybe 1/8 of an inch. Whoop, okay, did you see what just happened right there? I went to pull it and it flipped on itself. So I got to bring this back around, because if you go like when it was flipped, you just got to bring it back around so that it gets back into a loop. Because you won't have a very consistent knot placement if you let it fall in on itself. Some folks make these smaller, some folks make them bigger. I just make them about 1/8 of an inch. We don't need all that much, but once again, I want to thank Jake Kaminsky. He's the one that actually showed me how to do this. And once I started doing it, I have had very, very good luck with it. Just going to do this a couple more times. You could, I suppose, not do this and just have a D-loop on there, but I'm going to show you something else that I do for knock fit that I find to be rather important. So that right there is generally about as long as I do it. And then what I'll do is I will end on the bottom, and then I'll just come to the top, and I'll just go through once, like I'm tying a shoe, but then when I bring it down, I don't let it go to the very end. I make sure that it goes in between the last two double knots that I did. So it kind of gets squeezed in between those. Tie that off there. Then we get out our fire. And I like this nylon because it burns down real nice. Okay. So that's that. The next thing I do is I pull out the greatest piece of archery hardware that every archer in the world needs to have as a tool, a fork. And then basically I will just take this and just kind of compress this little jobby. And that's your adjustable knock set right there. Now, if you're asking how is it adjustable, depending on which way your serving goes and depending on all that kind of stuff, once you get this turning, you can actually rotate it around the serving and it will follow the serving down or up.
Do you ever have slippage or your knocks on your knocks of your knock sets or notice serving separation?
I will notice serving separation, but not here. I will point that out here in just 1 minute. So basically what I'll do now is I will re-verify. See, I got a little rambunctious, so I'm too high now. So what I'll do is I'll just give this a couple twists down. Blam, right there. I'm gonna give it one more. And that's gonna put me exactly where I wanna be. So that will stay right there, and then what I will do, as far as D-loop material, there's a lot of folks out there that use a lot of stuff, but once Bob Destin turned me onto this stuff, I've never used anything else. And that is 23 Spectra D-loop material. This stuff is the bomb.com. It's a little bit smaller, but it is tough as nails. I got arrows trying to grab me over here. All right. So what I'll do now, and I also like the way that this stuff burns, because when you open it up, you'll see that there's a little core. See right there? And what I like is once you burn it, you don't have to touch it against the lighter or anything. You just can tap it with your finger, and it literally, I'm not even kidding you, makes a rock. Like, can you hear that? Literally, there's a little rock on there. It works so good. All right. So what I'll do here is the first one that I will do is under. If you missed how to tie on that D-loop, half hitch, then I don't know what to tell you. Then we'll bring this to the other side. Now I run probably a little shorter of a loop than most. Let's just be honest. I don't know why. I just always have. That's not how long it's going to stay, everybody. Don't freak out on me here.
It's cute.
Who said that? You did?
I did.
My wife's making fun of me. All right. Fuzz this out. Get that right there. Now, I forgot. I like the D-loop pliers that Mike LaPera makes, but I forgot them. So I suck. So I'm just going to take a pair of needle nose, and I'm gonna force my way into this. Rawr. So that's how we do that. So now, this is the reason that I like this, is because if anything ever happens to your D-loop, you will always have that knock set underneath. Now, knock fit is super important. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So, knock fit is very, very important for lots of reasons. But that's basically what I do right there. I know that my peep is a little low. It's not a little low, it's pretty low. I'll adjust that fully later. Close enough, good enough for government work. So that's basically how all I do to tie on that adjustable knock set. And no, I've never had one of these come off. I've never had one of these fail. I have had to change D-loops in the field, and because of that adjustable knock set in there, I've had no problems. Now, who asked the question about serving separation?
I don't remember.
Okay, so Brandon. All right, Brandon, here's my philosophy on serving separation. If I do everything properly, it had damn well better separate. That's my point. Why? Because you can't put this, in my opinion, you can't put this serving on tight enough, and considering the angles and the tension at full draw, because keep in mind what I already said earlier regarding, what the hell was it regarding? Oh, which way the bear shaft spins. Is at full draw, this string probably only has like 15 pounds of tension on it. So at full draw, like I can't do it right now. You can't stick your finger through there to change the peep. When this is at full draw, I can just stick my finger in there and twist it and move the peep all I want. Because at full draw, there's not a lot of tension on there. So with that being said, when this particular part of the system comes back, there is a tremendous amount of tension at these 2 points, especially at the bottom. And with the string being looser, that's going to allow more movement. Because if the string gets less tension, the serving gets less tension. It's just math. It's simple math. Ask somebody who's not a scientist, like Bill Nye. I mean, whatever. So for me, my center servings will usually separate underneath the bottom tied-on loop. On the bottom knot of the D loop, my servings will usually separate under there, but I don't see it until I have to replace the loop. So it doesn't affect anything, but what it's actually doing, and by using the word separating, that's actually kind of misleading. What it's actually doing is it's compressing the center serving between that point and the top knock set so tight that it actually is creating a gap. But it's not, I guess technically it's separating, but it's actually pulling it so tight above it that it just kind of pulls it apart right there. That doesn't bother me at all. As a matter of fact, that's what I want to see, because that's just what's happened so many hundreds of times. So now that we got that done, I'm going to show you one of the other things that I do to verify my knock set. And I know you're probably thinking, what do you mean verify? It's tied on right there, dumbass. This is true. It is tied on right there. However, what I'm going to do is I am going to put on a knock. It's all blurry?
Step back a little bit. Now there you go.
All right. I'm going to put on just a knock with no arrow. And why am I going to do this, you might ask? Because, this is going to be loud. Because any excessive knock pinch, any excessive issues with the entire D-loop system will manifest themselves on a knock. So, see how that knock is, so we're about half draw right now. Look at that knock. Bam. Oh, it's fine. It's straight. That's the whole point. It's straight. So let's come back to full draw. All right, so here we are. This is our knock at full draw with no arrow on it. For those of you that are kind of savvy to this, you're probably looking at that going, I get it. I get it. If there was excessive knock pinch, that knock would be sticking straight up like this, or it'd be pointing straight down. So think about that. Extrapolate that out as though there was an arrow connected to this. If the knock system, the knock set and the D loop, is trying to force this up, what do you think it's doing to the arrow? Conversely, if this is trying to force the knock down, what's that doing to the arrow on the rest? There you have it. So for me, and that's why you can talk about all the different knock sets and all the different D loops and all that different bullshit you want. But if you can't do this, you're inducing forces onto your knock, and that knock is going to transfer those forces to the arrow, and that arrow is going to transfer those forces to the arrow rest. Now, you can tune to those forces if you'd like. I just prefer not to. So this is kind of how I set this up, because I want the system to track as perfectly as I can. Like, babe, if you want to get this knock while I let this down, just like right here, you can just watch the knock as I let down. Okay, ready? Watch this knock move as I let down. How is that tracking? That's tracking like a superstar. So that's how I want my knock sets to fit. Now, when we start talking about center serving fit, that's a whole nother matter. I like my center servings to be 108, 109 thousandths total. But the overall fit of the center serving is one thing. How the knock set and the D loop work in conjunction with each other is quite another. Any questions on that? Does that make sense? Am I talking to myself?
There's no questions.
No questions, okay. All right, so that arrow's broke. So one of the next things that I'm going to verify on my rig is cam lean. And cam lean is critically important, especially on the bottom. So in looking at this, it looks like there's probably a 30, 40 thousand spacer on one side and maybe a 70 on the other. I'm not really sure on that, but basically I'll just take an arrow and I'll just slap it on there and see how she looks about the loop. That's pretty damn good. I got no problems with that whatsoever. Now, for a lot of you that watched the XXL build the other day, you're wondering, well, why aren't I using the Spot Hog laser? Well, I use that for cam tracking and all kinds of other stuff, but in this case, it's just super quick to use an arrow, so I just use an arrow. Plus, I always have an arrow on me in the field.
What do you use to measure overall thickness of your serving when it's on your string?
I'll be showing you that here in about 2 minutes. They asked, how do I measure overall thickness of servings and whatnot? So now here's the top cam. I'm going to tell you, this is just a starting point. This is not the end all be all. This bow is not tuned. This is just a good starting point. It's close-ish. It's not way out here. It's not crossing over the string over to here. It's just a straight cam. But I can tell you that straight does not mean perfect.
Why the cable side and not the string side?
On this one, because that's where the module is. They asked, first of all, why measure on the one side, not the other? Good question. So on the bottom cam, which is the most important cam, by the way, because you can only space it over and then you're done, whereas the top cam has the yoke. So getting the bottom cam straight, I consider that the drive cam for the entire system. So the reason I put it on the cable side, on the bottom cam, is because there's more room. There's more room right here, so it's easy to flap an arrow in there and see where it's at. Conversely, on the top cam, there's more room on the opposite side. So it's easier just to put an arrow on there because there's a big module right there. So if you were to put if you were to put it on the module, there's not a lot of surface area. Plus it's pushing you about 3/16 off the string. So it's just easier to just slap it on the side that will accept it the best. So there really is no direct science there. You could use the spot hog laser, but for the most part, that's that. When it comes to center servings, and now mind you, and these aren't even that expensive. You can go in for like $40, and I seriously recommend it for a number of reasons. And this is an electronic caliper. Nothing special, nothing fancy.
Cool.
It's just a tool. So what I will do in this particular setup is I will just take my see that? 109 thousandths. Well, 109 and a half thousandths. So there we go. That's the center serving. And on a lot of cams nowadays, I got to tell you, pay attention to your end servings as well, because they can affect how the cam tracks seat on the cables and the strings, and that can cause tuning issues. Trust me. Yes, babe.
Dave Madden, do you ever put an arrow on the top cam and bottom cam at the same time to see if the point line?
No. Nope. Dave Madden, sorry about that. Dave Madden asked if I ever put one on the top and the bottom to see if the points line up, and the answer to that is absolutely not, because this is a little bit counterintuitive. Generally speaking, when you have the bottom cam lined up when the bottom cam has a certain lineup, like this one does, this is pretty damn good though. That right there, a lot of people will automatically assume, I don't want to scratch the Aloha bow, will automatically assume that the top cam needs to match to your point, so that the points would match. Unfortunately, what that would do is, if you were to do that, if both of those cams were to be leaning the same way, your string would basically be making a curve. You would be inducing additional left and right knock travel, because your string would be throwing a curveball. So it's counterintuitive, but for me, historically, if my bottom cam has a little bit of lean going one way, my top cam, by the time I'm done tuning, has about that or so going the other way. So your string, even though the bottom cam is a little like this, the top cam is a little like this. So what ends up happening is the string's going straight. So they kind of offset each other. Instead of both of them being like this, where the string's going to be making a curve. So that's why there.
Chuck Cloud wants to know, where's the super special Nock tool that measures the pull of the string?
That? Chuck Cloud asked, where is the super secret tool that measures the ounces it takes to pull a knock off the string? And what he's referring to is this. This is a chunk of arrow with a brass eyelet glued into one end after being screwed into an old knob off of a true ball release. And then it takes a 246 bushing on that end. I also have another one down here with a bushing in it that will allow you to put a pin knock on it. And you might be wondering why. Well, here's why. And I'm kind of a geek. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to this, so don't judge me. But basically what happens is you put this on the string, and you pull, and it tells you how much weight it takes for your knock to come off of your string. Now, granted, I did this way down here. I actually did it right on a knot. But anyway, the point is I created this so that whether it's pin knocks or whatever it may be, I can know and I can play with the thickness of the center serving for different loads for whatever knock it may be coming off of the string. So it's right there, Chuck. Easy cheesy Japanesey.
Brent Franklin asks, with the spot hog, you don't align it to the other cam groove?
No. Who asked that?
Brent Franklin.
Brent Franklin. No, you do not line it up to the other groove. Basically because some of the take up on the cams is different. A lot of times the top cam will be taken up more than the bottom, but the amount of tunability in the system is based on the bottom, and to fix the bottom cam, you got to break the whole thing down and change spacers. So you're generally only doing that once. Once you do that and you get the cam lean acceptable, it doesn't have to be perfectly straight. It just doesn't. Once you get that done, then you can tune the top with the yokes. So the tracks per se are never going to line up perfectly. Let's see here. I turned it off. Let's see. All right. Go ahead and bring that around here and look at that so he can see. That's where the laser is. If you were to, this is along the bottom cam. That's where the laser hits on the top.
Point at it so they
I can't. I got to hold the bow. Okay. Just go ahead and walk right up there to that top limb. See that dot? That's the spot hog tool on the bottom limb. So it's never going to run directly straight. I don't care if it runs perfectly straight or not. That is that to me is pretty much perfect. One of the other things that I do with the calipers, and this is super important, especially if you are rebuilding bows yourself, but I do this on every single bow, no matter what, every single time, and that on a split limb bow. Obviously, if it's a single limb, if it's not a split limb bow, it doesn't really matter. But verify limb split. 825 out of the pocket. 827 at the cam. So it's very, very important to verify your spacing on split limbs. I have literally, I'm not even a joke, I wouldn't shit you guys, you're my favorite turds. I've been shipped a bow that would not tune. It was not a Hoyt. And it had an entire extra 70 thousandths spacer out at the cam. So the gap from here to here was 70 thousandths wider at the cam. Can you even imagine what those limbs were doing? It was horrible. So always verify the limb split, and a tool like this is exactly what you need to do that with.
Shane Miner asks, on your center serving, do you prefer the Nock fit to snap on string and spin freely, or with little resistance?
That was Shane?
Yes.
Shane asked if I like my nocks to fit on there snug or with a little resistance. Well, I like mine to, Shane, thanks for the question. I like mine to snap on and then slide a little bit. Not fall on their own, but I like them to snap on, nice snap, but then I want to be able to move them up and down without a whole bunch of problems. So that's an Easton 3D Super Nock. This is the new AAE Nock. Fits on, moves up and down, all right? This one has a little tighter snap than the 3D Super Nock because it's not quite as, the actual throat of it's not quite as long. Here is a biter knock. Ready? It is way looser. Way looser. So, like this. It's way looser. So like you can see that it's pretty loose. I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. But yes, I do make sure that my nocks fit a certain way. All of those are acceptable to me. I have seen some strings where you put them on center serving and it just slides right down on its own. I don't like that. I want it to have a little bit of snap there. So that is something key there as well. One of the other things that I do right off the bat is Evan still on here? Evan Williams, are you still on board the Aloha train? If you are, I want some of those hangers off the double XL, and here's why. Very first thing I do on these bows is I flip the outside hanger. See right here, this hanger here is flipped. The groove is on the inside, groove is on the outside. That's to give this side, for a right-handed shooter behind the bow, the right side, to give that side a little bit more leverage, because historically we always have to put more twists in that side. Well, what Hoyt did is on the double XL is they actually made a new teardrop hanger that already has offset depths. Yes, so I want to put those on here because it's neat and cool. Other than that, one of the other things that I will always pay attention to is rockers. Make sure that the rockers are properly positioned on the limbs, and just basically go from there. This bow is now pretty much ready to start tuning. I'm going to verify my knock height here real quick. Pretty damn close. So this bow is pretty much set to go now. I'm not a huge fan of paper tuning. I think paper tuning is macro, big tuning. Bear shaft tuning is micro tuning, and line tuning is super tuning. So, a paper tuning will get you close. It's by no means going to get you, all the way there. You can have a bullet hole through paper and your bear shaft not even hit close. Period. End of story. Once you adjust your bear shaft to hit where you want it, you'll still have a bullet hole through paper. Because once you get a bullet hole, you can do some tuning to get a bear shaft to hit and still have that same bullet hole through paper. So that's pretty much the initial, set up and go for this. I'll be running a 33 out front and a 12 out back. Other than that, that's pretty much going to be it for right now. We will obviously be doing some more stuff with bear shaft tuning and paper tuning. I already have videos on my YouTube channel for bear shaft and paper tuning, more bear shaft tuning than anything, but I am not opposed to doing more of them if that's what you guys want. But that's pretty much it. What other questions we got, babe?
Chuck Cloud wants to know if the cams are good at static, that doesn't mean they will be the same at full draw, right? Because of the load on the bus and control. Does this matter?
Chuck asked, the very intuitive question, Chuck. Well played. And basically what Chuck asked is, if the cam alignment is good at brace height, that doesn't necessarily mean that it will be at full draw. And he is absolutely correct. However, with a system like this, compared to the new Hyper ZT cam on the double XL, this has no, what we will consider self-corrective properties in this system that will allow the bottom cam to track straight regardless of input. There's no floating harness, there's none of that stuff down here. So, with this particular system, that is why I say a perfectly straight cam might not be perfect, because Chuck is absolutely correct. Chuck is correct and right, both at the same time. He is correct that for a right-handed shooter, a lot of times as the load on the cable side increases, coming to full draw, that bottom cam will kind of deflect away from that as those things load up. But unless you have a bad limb, unless you have, which I've broke them. I don't think I've ever gotten a bad Hoyt limb, but it's because I break shit. But generally speaking, you can tell this pretty easy. Now, obviously, I use the old Spot Hog laser right there. And I can do that on a draw board. I can do it at half draw, quarter draw, full draw. I can do that throughout the whole cycle, and it really shows me what's happening. If you don't have the Spot Hog laser, obviously, I would encourage you to pick one up. I've had that thing for 2002. I got that in 2002. It's 15 years ago. Well, it's almost fitting to be even another year. So I would encourage you to pick one up. The only thing I've ever had to change is batteries, because I do tend to leave it on. So Duracell thanks me for their business. But on this particular system, you can come, if you look at it with an arrow and you come to full draw and you can see where it hits the stop, that can give you a pretty good indication how it's tracking. If it looks good at brace height and you go to draw and the draw stop is barely hitting the cable, you might want to slow your roll and go to a shop or find somebody like myself who can help you, and you might have to swap some limbs, you might have to change your cam lean to accommodate for that tracking. On the top, of course, you have yokes. You can pretty much mitigate that however you see fit.
Chakuli wants to know what the measurement of your center serving thickness is.
Chuck Cooley asked what my center serving is. It was 109.5 thousandths. 109.5. I like it anywhere from 108 to 110. So 109.5 works just right. And Chuck, you need to get a hold of Linda Ochoa. You need to get a hold of Linda Ochoa and get you a positive energy sticker. Don't forget. Since Chuck was probably out golfing with the Senators or whatever, that's the positive energy sticker right there, Chuck. Can you see it? Is it on the screen?
Yep.
Right there. Positive energy sticker right there. All the good juju you can handle. So,
what distance do you bare shaft tune at?
20. Or what distance do I bare shaft tune at? 20. It's just a good relative tune. I've explained this before, but here's one of the main reasons that I bare shaft tune at 20 is I prefer that because then I can bring my bare shaft with me, and I will tell you, my bare shafts don't ever hit in the middle anymore. I can make them, but I don't because I have found there's a little bit more of a forgiving tune. I'm not Stefan Hansen. I'm not Jesse Broadwater by any stretch of the imagination, although if you were to add up how much they both weigh, I'll bet you I got them, or at least we're close. I'd fight them both at the same time. Anyway, what was the question?
Bare shaft.
Bare shaft. I do bare shafts at 20 because then you can bring a bare shaft with you, indoors, outdoors, hunting especially. This has saved my ass hunting. And if you think your bow's not right, pull out your bare shaft at 20 and shoot it. And I'll usually keep a picture on my phone, the one you're watching me on. I'll keep a picture on there of where my bare shaft hit. Right now, it's usually about an inch low right. And if my bare shaft in the field doesn't hit where it's supposed to be tuned, then I know something's changed. And 20 is just a relative number. Jesse Broadwater shoots bare shafts at 100 just for fun. You can. But I use that just as a reference. I use the bare shaft as a reference at 20, and then my super tuning is done with a line tuning at 100. Not for indoors, of course, but.
Gary Fawcett wants to know, do you end up moving your knock point after you time sync the cams?
No, I'll usually, sorry. What was his name?
Gary Fawcett.
Gary asked if I end up moving my knock set and my D-loop after I sync the cams. No, I will generally get the cams pretty damn close first. I've not checked draw length on this. So that's a pretty good point. But it's not going to change it that much. But as far as the cams go, I will get them relatively close. So any timing adjustments I do for hold, and let me clarify that. When I say that I adjust the timing for hold, that's all it does. I can put a half a twist in my bus cable and it'll still hit an inside-out Super X. I'm doing it literally for what my sight picture looks like. I get my stabilizers damn close, my draw length's right, my peep. I need to work on my peep height, I know that. But Once I get close and it starts to sit for a minute and then I'll get some weird movements, I'll start messing with my timing just to see if I can get that thing to park for the majority of the shot process. Once I get there, any minute adjustments I make there will not affect it enough for me to move this. If I go to make a draw length adjustment, and let's say I have to add or take away 3 or 6 twists out of my string, that's not even going to be but a fraction of a bump on the rest, so I won't have to move that. The caveat to that is, the heck was that bow a couple years ago? The Podium, the Hoyt Podium. I just yelled that, I don't know why. But the Podium, and this is something I see on the internet too. People are going, well, my arrow's not running through my burger hole. I don't give a shit about that. It doesn't, unless there's a geometry thing at play, I could care less where it runs through the burger hole. On the Vantage Elite Pluses that I shot the best scores of my life, I ran it as low as I could get it without hitting my fingers. And I don't even know why. But on the Podiums, there was some knock travel and there were some other geometry issues in that riser that we were actually running those 1/4 of an inch above the burger hole because that's where they tune the best. And that's where they were the most forgiving. So generally speaking, nowadays, the burger button holes has no effect on that.
Jack Kelly wants to know, how far over on your peg does your yoke cable set at full draw on a spiral? He had some issues in the past with cables so close to the edge of the peg, they jumped the peg a couple times. I tried everything to fix it, limb swaps, spacers, pocket swaps, never did solve it.
Really? I'd like to see that bow. For me, I'm sorry, what was his name? Jack. Sorry, Jack. I'm sucking at repeating questions today. So Jack asked where my stop. What are you laughing at? Whatever. Kathy's laughing at me. Jack asked where my cable stop on my bottom cam hits the cable, because apparently he had an issue with the bow that, and I have had that happen. And if you note, hold on, let me come over here. Since my good buddy Evan over there built this straight away, first of all, can you see that there's a little tiny washer underneath that that stop?
Is it silver?
Yes. Okay, that helps. If you have a certain cam lean, I've had to take that out because it hits the other cable. But for the most part, I've never had to do that. So obviously you had a tracking issue. I would have liked to have put hands on that bow. But you can see
What am I looking at?
where the stop hits the
Oh, I can't see it.
cable.
It's too dark.
You need to get in the right position. Get over here so you can see it. See it?
I don't know what I'm looking at.
Travis, point to it.
Oh, I see it.
Looking at here. Right where the stop is, the cable.
Dead center in the middle.
There we go. Okay. Sorry about that.
Yep, it hits right in the middle for me. If you had one that kept jumping over, which I have, I've had to either take out that spacer, or I've had to add 2 of them. So I've never had it to where it was unresolvable. So bummer for that. But generally speaking, you would just space the cam over until that wasn't an issue. So if you had a misdrilled limb, that could potentially cause that to not be possible. And the way you would have measured that, I don't know if you still have the bow, but pull both limbs and basically just put an axle through them and then measure from the end of one limb to the axle and then go to the other one and see if the axle is not straight. Shit happens. I mean, they're making those by the bajillions. And look, let me say this. I don't care what company it is. Hoyt, Matthews, PSC, AAE, Boning, Spot High, I don't care who it is. If you are manufacturing anything, shit's gonna get out the door that's not right. Period. I don't care if you're Ford, Dodge, Toyota, it doesn't matter. It's gonna happen. So I don't care if there's a bad thing here and there. I could care less about it. It's going to happen in manufacturing. I see a lot of people have a single problem like, oh, that company sucks. Well, not really. It happens. So that's something that you could have potentially checked.
Shane Miner, what size dot and lens power are you running in your scope, and how much do you want your dot to cover?
Shane Miner asked, what size dot and what power scope am I using? For, well, Shane, this year, 4 power for everything. I used to shoot 6. I'm just not man enough anymore for that. I'm just not man enough. I don't know if it's age or my eyes, I'm not man enough. So I shoot 4 for everything. I shoot the Verde Plus from Feather Vision. It's the best glass lens on the market. I am shooting about a 70 thousandths dot. I do shoot the DSA, which is the dual spectrum aiming system from Feather Vision. It's a black dot with a fiber optic in the middle. Now, for indoors, I take the fiber out, and it's just a black dot. And for me, it floats around the inside of the 10. This year, however, I did try the Stefan Hansen, Jesse Broadwater blanket carpet bomb theory of shooting like 170 thousandths dot that covered almost all the yellow. I'm not man enough for that either. I couldn't do it. I mean, it was a super calm sight picture. I'm not going to lie. You just sat there and floated, and it was nice, but I just couldn't make it work. I just couldn't. I just couldn't make it work. If you hold very steady and you don't have any peaking issues, if you're a Jesse or a Stefan Hansen, you can just get up there and put the blob on the blob and just let the blob sit on the blob, and you just execute your shot, and it goes in the same arrow hole every time. I couldn't. Mentally, I couldn't. I need more information. So I ended up taking out that 170, I think it was 170 thousandths dot, and just went back to I had actually put that 170 thousandths dot over the top of my DSA. But, so I'm shooting, it's about a 70 thousandths black dot. When I transition to outdoors, I will put the fiber optic back through the hole.
Peter Troger wants to know, why don't you change the spacer on the cam to get the upper one more in the right position?
Repeat that?
Why don't you change the spacer on the cam to get the upper one more in the right position?
Yes, why don't I change the spacer on the upper cam to get it in the right position? If I can't achieve the tune that I'm looking for with the yokes and I have to induce too much cam lean on the top, then I will switch spacers and put the bigger spacer on one side so that I do shift it over. On all the podiums that I have on all the Prevails I have right now, I've not had to do that. This bottom cam now is identical to my other Prevails, and I can't tell you where the top's going to end up because I've not tuned the bow yet. But if I need to, yes, I will absolutely move spacers on the top instead of putting way too much cam lean in it.
Daryl Hunt, when's the indoor tuning video coming?
Probably, Daryl Hunt asked when the indoor tuning video is going to come, and if I can get, what day is it today? Today's Saturday. Next week is my last freebie. So Kathy and I are actually going over to hang out with our daughter Tanisha and her fiance and our son Asa over in San Diego. We're going to hit up the LA Fit Expo next week, and then it's balls to the walls for me with ATA right after that. So I'd like to get it in before next week. If not, it'll be right after ATA, because after ATA it's go time. So it will be within the next couple of weeks for sure, hopefully sooner, hopefully before ATA, but if not, it'll be directly after.
Brent Franklin, do you set up before you put your bars on, then work with weights on your bars?
Brent asked if I set up the bow without bars and then work with them after. Yes, I do. And there's a couple reasons for that. First of all, I know what works for me. So as far as stabilizers go, I kind of got the stabilizer gig figured out. I've gotten lucky a time or two when it comes to stabilizers. So the stabilizer thing's not a real mystery for me. I know what my mass weight is. That didn't sound good. It's down under 280 now, but no. So I know what my mass weight consideration is, and that's key. And by that I mean, and I know Daryl's gonna tee off on me for this one. Even at my size and my strength, I have to shoot a bow that weighs 8.25 to 8.5 pounds. Period. End of story. I don't care. I do not care. If I get over, it's weird. If I get over 8.5 pounds, I can't hold it up. I don't, I promise you it's not a strength issue. It's something in my head. But if my bow gets over 8.5 pounds, I cannot hold that sumbitch up in the dot. I don't know why. It's historically just how it's been. The very best scores that I've ever shot, I shot with a 40-inch stabilizer with 2.5 ounces on the end, and a 12-inch V-bar with about 15. And that was on a Vantage Pro and a Vantage Elite Plus. So I shot that same exact rig on the Matthews Apex 8, which I shot longer than anything. But so for me, I know what my mass weight is. So when I get any new bow, I'm like, well, I'm shooting a 33 with 3 or 4, or I'm shooting a 30 with 4 or 5, and I'm shooting a 12 with 16 and a third ish. So I already know where that's at. But one of the reasons that I do set up my bows and I do some tuning before I put on stabilizers is I do what I call the cable rod test. And by that, what I mean is if you take a bare bow and you bring it to full draw, I'll come over here and do it. If you take a bare bow and you bring it to full draw, I'm not trying to walk all up in your camera business here. What's up? And then you watch the back of the cable rod right here. If you watch that, no stabilizers, I don't care about the sight. But if you watch this on a bare bow, when you come back to full draw, it's going to tell you a whole bunch. It'll tell you if your draw length's too long. It'll tell you if your draw length's too short. It'll tell you if your tiller's not right. It'll tell you if your cam timing is not right. And I'll show you why. Battery on what? Okay. So when you bring this back, see the back of that cable rod? Doesn't move. If my draw length was too short, it would be shaking like this. If my cam timing wasn't right, it would be quivering, real short and fast. So anything that's not proper on the bow, the end of this, while the bow is empty, is going to quiver. Once you get things set properly, or at least close, that's not going to move. Next time you're at an archery shop and they have a bunch of bare bows on the wall, just grab them and draw them, and then just watch the back of that cable rod and see what it does. You'll be surprised.
Jeremy Martin, how do you determine a starting point on your bars, length, angle, and weight?
Jeremy asks, how do I determine a starting point for length and weight for stabilizers? Well, the first thing I do is what bow is it? That's super important. If it's one of these bows, I already know where I'm going to be going based on mass weight and prior history. If you're shooting, plus I know my shot sequence. If you heel the bow hard like a Roger Willett, you're going to need a lot more weight up front. Period. Because you're heeling it, you're below center, and you're wanting to raise the bow up. So you're going to need more weight out front to calm things down. If you're a guy like a Tony Clem shoots pretty much a straight wrist like this. So he has less contact, he's going to need more weight in back. So if you have a PSE, if you have an Elite, if you have some of those bows that are extreme past parallel limb, you're going to need a little bit more weight in back unless you are of the extreme front end resistance load mentality like a Stefan Hansen. Stefan Hansen could put that stabilizer system he has on any bow because he's running like 20 ounces out front. And so he's not balancing jack shit. I mean, his arms are this big around and he's holding up 20 ounces on the end of that bow like for free. Well, that's a resistance load. He comes back to full draw and he is just resisting the downward load of that front bar until the shot breaks. That's not the kind of shot I shoot. So that's one thing. If you're a puncher, if you're a Gillinghammer, you need your bow to react. You need to be able to move it and stop it and do the whole jiggy thing. If you're a Jesse Broadwater or a Chance Bobeth, they just need to get that thing close and then they just need to let her kind of float. And they're just going to let her sit there and chill until they're boink and their shot goes off. If you're Chance, you can be about 15 more seconds than that before it goes off, but you get the point. So there's a lot of different variables that take place when talking about stabilizers. Mass weight is a huge one. I was just talking about that. I can only shoot a bow that's 8.5 to 8.25 pounds. So when I get a bow, I already know, okay, how heavy are my stabilizers? How much weight can I put here and there to accomplish what I need to accomplish? And so it really comes down to what your shot is, what your bow hand is, and the geometry of your bow combined with your mass weight considerations.
If you have cam lean on one of the cams, did you measure the length of the limbs?
If I have cam lean on one of the cams, do I measure the length of the limbs? I haven't had to do that for many, many years. Generally speaking, that would go back to the misdrilled axles, which I have not seen in a very, very long time. But generally speaking, with most of these, the length, and this is once again a little bit counterintuitive, Kathy's hungry over there, is the length, like let's say you have a limb that is 15 inches long and you have one that is 15.25 inches long, but the holes are drilled from the same end at 14.5 inches. As long as the holes are drilled right from the same end, one limb could be 1/4 inch longer. Is it going to really affect cam lean? Hard to tell. Probably not. Might affect some other things, but generally speaking, no. Is that it? All right, everybody. Oh.
One review of the bow. What's that? Lots of comments on how cool it is.
Yep, want to thank Evan and Mike Looper and Brian Gold and Zach Kurtzall and all the folks over. Randy Walk, Randy, I know you're creeping, but want to thank them for letting me do this. Check out Darren over at Melonhead Customs down in Phoenix. He's the one that did all this Cerakote on here, and he did an absolute amazing job. So thanks again, everybody. Hope you all had a good Christmas. Be safe out there for New Year's. The freaks come out at night, and so everybody be safe. We don't need any accidents. We don't need any of that stuff. If you're going out for a late season hunt, wear your harness, do all that kind of crap, because we don't need any more incidences.
Cooley says inquiring minds want to know if you can still outrun bathwater.
Without question. Inquiring minds want to know if I can still outrun Jesse Slowwater. Absolutely. Absolutely. And if I thought he was going to win, I'd trip him, because if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. It's only cheating if you get caught. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Love you guys.
Bye.
Look forward to talking to you again. Have a happy new year. Love, peace, and chicken grease.